Howdy, everybody. It is Wednesday. Wednesday, September 16th. How's everybody doing? Um, it seems to be cooling down. We're past all the 100-degree days. Possibly the fires are still raging, smokes everywhere. Hopefully, you don't have any family up in Oregon like I do near Bedford because Talent and Phoenix are burnt to the ground. The fire is still going north. We got fires all around us. Fire season, guys. It's dangerous out there. Be careful and be smart. I'm still obviously grading papers. That'll never stop. But I'm reading some pretty good papers, by the way, from a couple of my classes. So I'm happy over that. I do. Hopefully, I'm going to keep referring to this little book, Writing About Movies. It's really important to have it. If you don't have it, you're just going to be behind the eight ball the whole time. I'll keep going over it as much as I can, but I can't read the whole thing to you. That's up to you. So hopefully you've gotten it by now. Use it. Look at announcements. I'm going to start posting important chapters to read and stuff like that. We don't have time to go over it on these lectures. So today I'm going to be talking about what? Yeah, we're coming out of the Great Depression. Last time I spoke to you, which was Monday, I talked about the passing of African American actors and how important they are to our new reality we live in, and they're no longer as shut out as they used to be. And hopefully, you've seen some of those movies like Get Out and Black Panther, etc. They're important. It's important cinema and an important time in our history in this country. Today, I want to go back to where we were before that little segue and talk about coming out of the Depression and how it changed, again, everything there was to change. We were in that Depression for 10 years, and so our movies reflected the culture, which they always do, and so the Depression era had, remember I spoke about it earlier, they had musicals, frivolous musicals to make people feel good, screwball comedies to make people feel good. They had monster movies like Frankenstein and The Mummy and Dracula because an evil force was happening in Europe by the name of the Third Reich and Adolf Nazism. And so in the meantime, Frankenstein, the monster, was unhinged, and we could deal with him, but for some reason we can't deal with Hitler yet. That comes a little later. It was too much for us to handle. By now, in Europe, Hitler is rolling over some countries. He rolled over Poland, and he's about to come into France and occupy France and Paris. And we're not in the war yet because we feel pretty safe because we got an ocean between them and us. That all changes pretty damn soon when Pearl Harbor happens. And then we're into the war, whether we like it or not. But before that war happens, in 1939, there was a bumper crop of Hollywood movies that came out that, once again, is a landmark and a land of cinema, how we grew over those 10 years of Depression, to making pretty amazing cinema, epic cinema. When I say epic, I'm talking about big stories with a big canvas to shoot on. And 1939, if you go to Wikipedia and find the movies listed there, it's literally 50 of the most famous Hollywood movies ever made. In 1 year, folks, that's a lot. I'll talk about a few of them right now that changed everything there was to change before I talk about Orson Welles, which we need to talk about seriously between us. Orson Welles is important. But in 1939, the great John Ford, who had already won the Academy Award, he'd been directing films since the silent era. The Informer was one, 1935, and he directed three films in 1939, folks. Three. Think about that. Right now, the average movie takes 3 to 5 years to get made, from conception to writing it, to casting it, to financing it, to filming it, to getting it released. 3 to 5 years. That's fast, I think. But in the old days, it was a factory. These studios, that's what they called them. They were a factory. And it was like going to work at a factory. They're building an automobile. Except for automobiles, they're building movies. And so there was these huge movie studios in LA. Maybe you've seen them. Maybe you've taken a tour of Universal Studios. We got Paramount, 20th Century. We've got RKO and Warner Brothers. All these studios, and they employ hundreds and hundreds of technicians, everywhere from cameramen to costumers to makeup people to people who specialize in special effects, everything. It's a factory. And so when your movie comes in, their needs, they just move them right down the factory line, and they just say, what do you need? It's a period piece. It's a Western. You go get the costumes over there. You go get the horses over there, and it's happening. And it happens quickly. It's very methodical and well plotted out and very well organized. And you work fast. Didn't waste a lot of money like they do now. So in 1939, John Ford made Young Mr. Lincoln. John Ford usually a lot worked with American stories, historical stories, like My Darling Clementine, which is the Good Fight at Oak Creek Corral, The Searchers. She Wore a Yellow Ribbon. Those are later, though. 1939, he did Young Mr. Lincoln with Henry Fonda playing Abraham Lincoln. The young Lincoln, not the presidential Lincoln. This is him as a lawyer, as his rise to fame. And so it's a really poignant character study of a time in our history before the Civil War. Then he also did Drums Along the Mohawk with Henry Fonda again and Claudia Colbert, and it's set in the Revolutionary War era of our country, in the Mohawk Valley in New York State, and the Revolutionary War is breaking out, and the British have employed the Iroquois Indians to help fight on their side, and so the Indians were fighting alongside of the British. British, I'm sure, were stringing them along with a bunch of empty promises. But be that as it may, that's who Americans had to fight. And once again, it's set in a historical time, exciting time in our country, a young country that's just being created, actually. And the third one he did, which is the one that really capped it for him and not only made his career, stamped it huge in platinum, it also made John Wayne's career. If you know who John Wayne is, John Wayne was a B actor in the 30s. He wasn't known for much besides what they call B westerns. These are quickie westerns that open up the A movie. When you went to the movies theaters in the olden days, there would be several movies. There would be the headlining movie, which they called the A movie, which was a big budget movie with movie stars. The B movie, which was not big budget, and it could be a gangster film, it could be a monster film, it could be a western, which were easy to do because they're filmed all outside, not a bunch of tricky sets to build and whatnot. And those were the B movies. They're filmed usually in 15 days, less, And there was a lot of, and John Wayne did a bunch of those before anybody really knew who he was. He wasn't making much of an impression until this movie. John Ford cast him in the Stagecoach, and made it officially made him a star. Stagecoach is now been copied a million times in different forms, but at the time it was cutting edge. It's a story about some people who have to make their way across, once again, hostile Indian territory, and they're in a stagecoach and they're unprotected. And so they decide they've got to get across this territory no matter what. And in the stagecoach, they have the kind of cliche characters that have become cliche, but they weren't then. They have the doctor who was a drunk, and he's being kind of run out of town because he's always drunk, trying to do surgery, not good. So he's a reject. They've got the banker who is snobbish and corrupt. We don't know it yet, but he's stealing money from his bank. That's why he's once on the stagecoach that's going across the dangerous flatlands of Indian country because he has money that he's stolen. Then there's the school marm who's pregnant, who's going to go, and she's the uptight religious woman who has a husband in the military, and she's going to meet him at this fort in the middle of Indian country, and she wants to get there. There's the liquor salesman. He's a little timid salesman guy. It's because he's got all the samples for booze. And then there's the gambler. He's the dandy, played by John Carradine. He's a slick guy, but he's honest. He's not a cheat, but he's not a reputable member of society. These people usually are run out of town with the good people of whatever town they're in. They don't like having a gambler. They don't like having a prostitute. One of the men in this thing is a prostitute. They never say the word prostitute, though. She's a lady of ill repute. She's a dance hall employee. We all know what that means. You work in a bar as a woman serving liquor. You probably many times were doing sexual favors for money. And so they're running her out of town. And so these people are on the stagecoach. About halfway through their journey, they pick up John Wayne, the Ringo Kid. He's a rancher and somewhat of a gunfighter. And he got his horse died, and he's out there stranded. And so he's literally hitching a ride on the stagecoach. They let him on, but they make him sit up top because when the school marm finds out he's sort of a gunfighter, she doesn't want to be in the same coach with him. But he takes a shining to the woman, the prostitute with the heart of gold, because she is kind and she's smart and wise. But she's a lady of the night, and a respectable man wouldn't be serious with her. But during the stagecoach ride out, it's fraught with danger. They have to fight the Indians off. People in the stagecoach are killed. They kill a lot of Indians too. John Wayne is a good shot. In the meantime, John is on a mission to gun down these people who gunned down a member of his family. He's going to get revenge. And the prostitute with the heart of gold, just trying to talk him out of it. And they start to fall in love without ever touching, folks. There's not like they do now. There's nothing, but we know it's there. And why? But he doesn't know her background, so he's not judging her. And so everybody learns a lesson about who they are. They all learn to become better people by the end of the stage ride. They survive it, and they are better for it as humans. They actually learn something if they didn't get killed in the meantime. And this was a revolutionary film. filmed in wonderful black and white, and out in John Ford's beloved um, Monument Valley. If you've ever been out there, Utah, you'll see what I mean. He filmed most of his westerns out there. So it looks wonderful. It's big, epic travel. And is it a racist film? Absolutely. Meaning, do they treat the Indians like crap? Yep. Later on, John Ford regretted that, and he made some other movies where they didn't treat the Indians so bad. He made Cheyenne Autumn, one of the last movies ever made, to try to make up for his treatment of Native Americans in his films. Cheyenne Autumn's a fine film, made in 1963, I believe. John Ford's pretty old by then. Anyway, shot a lot of it in Monument Valley. So there's the 3 John Ford movies. In the meantime, they made a movie you've all maybe familiar with. Maybe watch it with your family. Maybe you know the songs. Somewhere Over the Rainbow. And it's called Wizard of Oz. It was a very tricky movie to make. Half of it's in color. Yes, they did have color film, folks, but they're still the preference was black and white. So if you've seen Wizard of Oz, you know that when Dorothy is in Kansas, it's in black and white, and when she goes to Oz, it's in the wonderful world of color. Oz looks beautiful. It's all filmed on a big set with bright, bright colors. The Munchkins come out to sing, welcoming Dorothy, the good witch, welcomes her. The bad witch doesn't welcome her. And then she meets, of course, the Cowardly Lion, the Tin Man, Scarecrow, and they go on the Yellow Brick Road to see the great wizard to try to get their dreams. The Tin Man wants a heart. The Scarecrow wants a brain. And the Cowardly Lion wants courage. And Dorothy wants to go back home. How do I get back home? How she gets to Oz, hopefully you know the story. There's a tornado coming in Kansas. She's hiding in her bedroom with her little dog Toto. She has swept up her house into the tornado and is taken away off to the land of Oz. When the house crash lands, she crash lands in Oz. Is it a dream? Watch the movie and find out. Did it really happen? Watch the movie and find out. I know I've seen the movie a million times. When I was a kid, we just used to love it, and now I think, why did she want to go back to Kansas so bad? She lives on a farm. It's black and white. It's boring and dull. Oz is happening. Lots of action going on. It's in color. Witches are flying around. Lions could talk. Scarecrows could dance and sing. That's got to be better than Oz, right? But the moral of the story is, folks, there's no place like home. And by clicking her red ruby slippers, she's granted her wish to go home to her beloved Kansas. And that was a huge, huge success. Little Dorothy was played by the late great Judy Garland, who was 18 or so at the time. She's supposed to be playing a 12-year-old girl. And they essentially tortured the living bejesus out of her because they literally starved her to death and had her on diet pills, which she became addicted to. Stays thin. Hollywood, you got to stay thin, especially the women. And they had to tape down her breasts to make her look like she's 13, not the woman she was. And they tortured her with singing lessons, dancing lessons. And how did they make her stay up late? All these lessons. That's right, folks. Methamphetamines. They used to call it a bunch of different things, speed, whatever. That they pumped speed in her and diet pills. And for the rest of her life, she was addicted to both those things. And she died early, 47 years old. She was a complete alcoholic wreck. But she's wonderful in this movie, and it's a legendary film, and it was supposed to be for children, but adults ate it up and they loved it. And so it broke out of the mode. This is 1939 now. and it looked like Hollywood was back on track. The other huge movie that came out in 1939 that I'll cover briefly is Gone with the Wind. Gone with the Wind was based on a huge bestseller novel. It's set in the Civil War, set around a woman, Scarlett, and her beloved Tara, which is her what do you call it, mansion. Yes, folks, she had slaves, but they were happy slaves, and her plantation. And then she falls in love with a kind of a rapscallion, charming fellow played by the late great Clark Gable. They get married. She's a spoiled, rich, bitch, absolutely. And who could you compare to now? The Kardashians, Paris Hilton, something like that. And they get married, have a child. The child is killed in a horse accident, and it devastates Clark Gable. But his wife is still a spoiled, acting like she's still a rich bitch. As the war's raging and they lose their plantation, and she clings to a way of life that is disappearing. Atlanta is burned. That's where they live. The good old days of ballroom dancing is over, and the South is lost. And Clark Gable leaves her, and it's not an easy thing to do, to leave his trophy wife, but she never kind of grows up until he leaves. And there's a famous line in there. It's the first cuss word, swear word, whatever you want to call it, ever uttered in cinema. You can see go to look at the film clip of him saying it. It was so controversial, it's in the book, that when he's leaving her and he's she's begging him to stay, he looks at her and he says, frankly, frankly, Scarlett, I don't give a damn. People were outraged. The press, the critics, the Catholic Church, they're like, Clark Gable just said the word damn in a movie? Think about that, folks. Anyway, a little historical perspective. Have we changed with our dialogue in movies? And movie was huge blockbuster. It was legendary. It was the big box office king for many, many years. Only recently, during this Black Lives Matter, has it been reevaluated as a racist film. And I think Amazon was running it, and they pulled it off for a while. Now they show it with a message. This is a film that we do not support the slavery, the happy slaves in it that are cliches, and but it's an important film to watch. But you got to take it with a grain of salt, because essentially it is a racist film. That's how we do history. But at least we have a chance to make up for it, make up for our trespasses. And it was shot all in color, folks, all in color. So you could go watch it one day. It's a big epic. Civil War battles, Atlanta burning, fancy people at balls. Huge hit. And this is all 1939. There was Wuthering Heights, and there were so many more. I can't go through them all. It was an incredible bumper year for Hollywood, because they're coming out of the Depression and they're feeling good. And they've got some cash, and they spent it on some really excellent movies. And it changed the course of cinema. Once again, it spun it off into this other decade that's coming. That's the 1940s. A filmmaker of 1940s, maybe one of the most important ones, is Orson Welles. And his movie Citizen Kane. That's what you're going to write your paper about. Your next essay is find a copy of Citizen Kane and give me a critical analysis of it. I saw it on YouTube. I'm sorry, folks. It costs money. If you can't do it on YouTube, if you have Hulu, it's on there. If you have Amazon Prime, it's on there. I can't find it free anywhere, because it's a copyrighted thing. So seek it out. I'll sign it today. You'll have a week to do the paper. Analyze the film. I will talk to you more about it later. Citizen Kane, 1941, by the great Orson Welles, who was 25 years old at the time. And it's his first film. He came from the Broadway theater. And I would like you guys to research a little bit about Orson. He was an incredible artist, and he lived until about 1986, always trying to make his next movie. But this movie put him on the map in a huge way. And the interesting thing about it, he had complete artistic control over it. He had final cut. The studio wanted to work with Orson Welles. And so he gave them essentially a masterpiece that changed, once again, the way he filmed it. It's in black and white, folks, sorry. The way he filmed it, with deep focus, the music, the foreshadowing, the themes, the camera placements, the performers, they're all done by the Mercury players, and they're all relatively young when they made it, but they age in it. Orson Welles was 25, but he ages until his 80s, and he does a great job as an 80-year-old guy. Citizen Kane, about a lightly fictitious version of Randolph Hearst, the newspaper mogul that at one time owned 50 newspapers. Yes, folks, that was before TV, and newspapers were the medium to own. Yes, there was radio, but newspapers was how people got their news and their entertainment and just about everything else. And Randolph Hearst was out here in California. His family still owns San Francisco Chronicle. Maybe you've heard of it. Maybe you've read it. I'll talk about more of that later, but I would like you, because Orson is such a, you can't cover him in one class. It's impossible. It's not fair to Orson or to us as scholars of film, and that's what you're becoming. You're becoming scholars of cinema history. So I'm going to assign that as your essay. You're going to have to go to Films on Demand and probably watch the 4th episode of The Story of Film. If you're keeping up in your book, we're at about 169, 61 past there. That covers 38 to the early 40s. But the film, the documentary, you guys hopefully been watching, that I've assigned, it covers it too. And so look for that. Also, I'll post that later. Look at modules, and you'll see them posted. Whew, that's it, folks. That's our discussion for today. I'll see you soon. Stay safe out there, and treat each other kindly, please. Would you please? I appreciate it. Thanks.